and over again that there is a two-tier judicial system in America. Yet many of you don't believe me. How do I know? Because you refuse to subscribe to the channel and you refuse to actually look at the videos and really learn the truth about matters. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story about a man who was falsely convicted of murder. So what did he do? He studied law while in prison and freed himself. Derek Hamilton was part of a crack team of jailhouse lawyers. What they lack in academic credentials, they made up for in time and determination. I'm Tyrone Bowman. This is Tyrone Bowman Tonight. According to The Guardian, and I want to make this picture big of this gentleman right here. This gentleman right here, Derek Hamilton, who was falsely convicted of murder, and they knew that he was innocent. Sentenced, probably to life in prison, we'll find out as I get further into this article. He decided, along with some of his comrades, if you please, they became jailhouse lawyers. He studied law for himself, and as a result, he's now free. Now let's talk about this story. So I don't want to hear people telling me that the judicial system is fair. No, it is not fair. It has never been fair. According to The Guardian, Louis Scarelia was your classic 70s New York City detective, a hard-charging renegade who lived for locking up bad guys. In 26 years on the beat, most of that time overlapping with New York's crack era, he was famous for his ability to close cases and seal murder convictions. Let's get back to my feed here. There was just one problem with his carefully crafted reputation. He was crooked, rotten. It took a group of wrongfully convicted people who were imprisoned based on Scarela's overzealous policing to reveal the lie. We pledged that whoever got out of prison first would spread the word that there were many men in jail for crimes they didn't commit, says the 58-year-old Derek Hamilton, now a paralegal teaching at Stevia University's Cardozo School of Law. Hamilton was part of that crack team of jailhouse lawyers, the term for the self-taught incarcerated people who take up the slack when public defenders fall short or can't take clients who have already lost their first appeal. I call them public pretenders. Why? Because I've been there. I know what it is to be falsely accused. I know what it is to be convicted. I know what it is to be framed and set up by lying prosecutors, deceitful, corrupt judges, lying witnesses, and lying cops. So don't tell me that false imprisonment is not real. That's the reason why now I am a criminal justice major, studying and fighting. And once I graduate and get that law degree, I'm going to become a criminal justice reforms advocate, fighting for men and women who are falsely accused. So let's check out the rest of this story. So what they lack in academic credentials, most have little more than a high school degree. They make up for in time and determination also. They work a whole lot cheaper. Basically, the system says, we don't care about your innocence, says Shabaka Shakur, a paralegal consultant for New York City's Department of Education. We're just here to make sure you have a fair trial. You had a lawyer, you met the minimum standard of what you were supposed to get in court, whether you're innocent or not. It's not our issue. This is how public pretenders are talking. Former residents of a correctional facility in Auburn, New York, Hamilton and Shakur were partners at a jailhouse firm called the Actual Innocence, or AI, a term used in post-conviction claims. Shakur was sentenced to 20 years to life in 1989 for the murder of two drug dealers. Hamilton was sentenced to 25 years to life in 1993 for a murder outside of a housing project. Like Hogan's Heroes, tunneling under the jailhouse, the A-Team was a way to remain engaged with the outside world and keep their cases churning in the system. and it attracted its share of legal pendants. They used to put me in the box regularly, says Shakur, or the hole. That's what they do because they get mad and ticked off. Recalling his stints in solitary confinement. But I would always file these hearing motions and the judge would let me out. Guys would be like, yo, you're really good at that law. And I'd say, no, these guys never follow the rules. I'm going to show you a picture of now retired NY corrupt cop, now retired detective Louis Scarella, as he walks towards Kings County Supreme Court in Brooklyn, New York on 27th of July of 2022. So let me put this corrupt guy's face up there. And you can tell he's corrupt. Just look at him. Corrupt cops, framing black men, locking them up. Yep, those are the ones. They do it all the time. Then they hide behind the police badge. They hide behind total immunity. They hide behind the cloak and collar of the law. They hide behind the judges and the corrupt prosecutors, knowing that they've destroyed people's lives. So if people get upset, y'all just have to get upset. I'm going to tell it just the way it is. The more the A-team advocated for themselves and their clients, the closer they got to dismantling the legacy of one of the most fabled figures in New York law enforcement. In 2013, a New York Times examination found that the guilty verdicts in many of Scarcella's murder cases had been derived through force or false confessions and the testimony of the same eyewitnesses. The Brooklyn District Attorney's Office offered a review of 50 of the 70 murder cases Scarcella worked. As of this April, around 130 of those cases have seen the original trial convictions reversed. Hamilton and Shakur are among the A-team members who share their experience in the podcast, The Burden, the limited series, which unfolds over 9.5-hour-long episodes, also features extensive interviews with Scarcella, who, of course, doesn't apologize for his message. We don't give a damn. Whatever. Y'all never apologize. We don't give a damn. So he doesn't apologize for his methods or the system that made him a hero. Scarcella hasn't been charged with any crimes, despite official citations for bad practice, and he insists he did nothing wrong. The resulting claims and settlements from those wrongfully convicted have cost New York taxpayers more than $100 million. And while I'm thinking about the Central Park Five, who then real estate developer Donald Trump took out a full-page $1 million ad calling for the execution of those innocent men who were falsely accused of allegedly raping the jogger in Central Park. And it later was revealed that the confessions were coerced. The Central Park Five were viciously beat. They spent almost 8 years in prison. And New York had to spend almost $50 million in compensatory damages toward these young men. And you can laugh and you can make your snide remarks in the comment section, but that could be somebody in your family, and you won't like it if somebody in your family is falsely accused. Let's get back to this story. So he hasn't been charged. The resulting claims and settlements for those wrongfully convicted have cost New York taxpayers more than $100 million. The sum barely accounts for the psychic toll on Shakur. His charges were dismissed in 2015 by Justice Damon Green, and the late Brooklyn District Attorney Kenneth Thompson decided not to retry after Green concluded that Scarcella had falsified a confession from Shakur. By then, Shakur had served 27 years in prison. Let that sink in for a minute. 27 years in prison for being falsely accused for a crime that one did not commit. That same year, Thompson's office concluded that Hamilton was also innocent, and he was freed after 23 years in prison. I was surprised to learn how easy it was for somebody to manipulate the criminal justice system, Hamilton says. A Brooklyn native, Hamilton characterizes himself as a fundamentally good kid. His habit of showing up to school in the same blazer and slacks earned him the family nickname, Sooty. who fell in with the tough crowds that terrorized his community. At age 15, he received his first jail sentence for robbery, which consisted of 60 days. In 1993, not long after turning 18, Hamilton was convicted twice for the murder of a bread delivery man in his Brooklyn neighborhood and given a 32 years to life sentence, but won his release on appeal 6 years later via an Alford plea, which allows a defendant to accept a plea bargain while maintaining their innocence. Raring to start over with his wife and 3 children, Hamilton made a plan with his brother to open a hair salon in New Haven, Connecticut. 2 weeks after its grand opening in March 1991, Scarcella barged in and collared Hamilton for another Brooklyn murder, involving a person Hamilton knew, with help from eyewitnesses later found to have testified under pressure from Scarcella. He probably had dirt on him as well. Hamilton received a 25-year to life sentence. Pictures, hotel receipts, we had the evidence, Hamilton says, of his alibi. But Scarcella's very convincing. He had a charisma that people tend to believe. Hamilton began serving that time at the maximum security facility in Attica, New York, infamous for its 1971 riot and for being one of the toughest prisons in the country. Placed in solitary confinement for nearly a decade, he took on work as a jailhouse lawyer as a mental escape from his tortured surrounds. This was after apprenticing under jailhouse lawyers during a previous prison stint. In a breakthrough case, he won the release of the Bronx man convicted for the murder of 50 Cent, the notorious criminal from Curtis Jackson. The multi-platinum rap star took his stage name. After a 2009 transfer to Auburn, New York, a hard-won reprieve from solitary confinement, Hamilton finally had access to the prisoner's library and mandatory provision in all New York correctional state facilities. It was there that another inmate, Nelson Cruz, formally introduced Hamilton to 2 more men Hamilton knew were fighting to overturn their murder convictions, Shakur and Danny Rincon. They decided to join forces and launch Actual Innocence. Each man played a specific role. Hamilton was the law professor, Shakur was the document expert, and Rincon handled media outreach. That led Cruz to play clerk and provide the coffee brewed from the water in his cell toilet. Been there, done that. And a sock filter, which he delivered to Hamilton's cell via a sheet-made line to keep him from tying up motions deep into Cite. So here's a picture of Derek Hamilton upon his acquittal of these charges. All right, let's conclude this story here. I think I'll conclude it. Yep. We worked every single day, Hamilton recalls. We bugged lawyers, judges, prosecutors. Everybody would hear from us. We had to organize ourselves as one unit because individually we weren't being heard. Only a company masthead would have made their legal team more official. It's funny. You should say that, Hamilton says. We couldn't get that far because there are rules and regulations as far as owning businesses and branding and things of that nature. Eventually, their team of 4 grew to 12 people, which presented some daunting math for the firm. Jailhouse lawyers have a reputation for getting everyone out of prison but themselves. But that prospect became less fraught for the AI team, once they discovered the common link between all their cases was Scarcella. We definitely believe that you left no man behind, Hamilton says. Amazingly, this motley crew was able to get 3 of its principals out. Rincon is still arguing for his release. He's got a really complicated case, Shakur said. But Hamilton, who won $7 million in settlements from the cities of New York and New Haven for his wrongful conviction, is still bitter, and I don't blame him. Ain't nobody gonna be talking about forgiveness and stuff after you lock them up all the time. Not gonna happen. He still has PTSD from his 2 decades in prison while advocating for criminal justice reforms. In our conversations, he made a point of paying tributes to Thompson and the late Brooklyn DA, a notable ally who pushed to reopen Scarcella's cases, even as he received flack from black constituents for his lenient sentencing. Recommendations following the 2014 police killing of Akia cruelly. Ken was a man who believed in changing the system. Hamilton says, I understand how the black community feels, but I also understand Ken's objective stance and understanding of police culture. That's what it boiled down to. Remarkably, Hamilton is just as philosophical about the detective who robbed him of so many years. Quote, Scarcella was a product of the time, he says. When he called you a murderer or a killer, people really believed him. That's my biggest thing with him. He was given the ability to close cases, and it didn't matter whether he did it within the framework of the Constitution or whether or not people actually got justice. And the Burden Podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, and other platforms. I'm Tyrone Bowman. Never surrender, never quit.